Something felt wrong in my own house, so I faked a vacation. While watching from across the street, my elderly neighbor approached and whispered, "Stay awake until midnight. You need to see this." When the clock struck 12, I couldn't believe what I saw. Where are you watching from today? Drop your location in the comments below and hit that like and subscribe button. Let me back up and tell you how a 62-year-old widow ended up spying on her own home like some kind of discount private investigator. 3 weeks ago, I started noticing things, little things that made my skin crawl, though I couldn't put my finger on why. It began with the coffee. I've been drinking the same brand for 15 years, Folgers Classic Roast. Nothing fancy, but suddenly it tasted different, bitter in a way that made my stomach turn. Maybe they changed the formula, I told myself, because what else could it be? Then came the headaches. Every afternoon, like clockwork, this pounding behind my eyes that made me want to crawl into bed and stay there. My doctor said it was probably stress from losing my husband Robert 8 months ago. "Grief affects everyone differently, Sarah," she said, with that sympathetic voice medical professionals perfect after decades of delivering bad news. But the strangest thing was how my children suddenly became so attentive. Jake, my 35-year-old son who usually called me twice a year, Christmas and my birthday, started showing up every few days with groceries I didn't need. "Just checking on you, Mom," he'd say, unpacking organic vegetables I'd never buy and premium steaks that cost more than my electric bill. Emma, my 32-year-old daughter, began staying overnight twice a week. "I worry about you being alone in this big house," she explained, though she'd never worried about it before Robert died. She'd arrive with her overnight bag and that fake cheerful voice she uses when she wants something. The attention felt wrong. Not loving daughter and son wrong, but vulture circling wounded prey wrong. Last Tuesday, I decided to test my suspicions. I announced over dinner, a dinner Emma had insisted on cooking, that I was thinking of taking a cruise to Alaska. You know, get out of the house, see some sights, clear my head. The reaction was immediate and telling. Emma dropped her fork. Jake's face went through about 5 different expressions before settling on forced enthusiasm. "A cruise? Mom, are you sure you're ready for that kind of trip? It's been such a difficult year." "I think it sounds wonderful," Emma chimed in quickly, shooting Jake a look I pretended not to catch. "When were you thinking of going?" "Next week. There's a last-minute deal, leaves from Seattle." They exchanged another glance. These two, who couldn't agree on pizza toppings, suddenly seemed to be having an entire conversation without words. "We could drive you to the airport," Jake offered. "Help you get settled." That night, lying in bed, I made a decision that would have sounded crazy to anyone else, but made perfect sense to me. I was going to fake this vacation and see what my loving children did while they thought I was gone. The next morning, I called my neighbor Mrs. Patterson and asked her a favor that required some explaining. "I need you to watch my house while I'm supposedly on vacation, but I'll actually be staying at the Comfort Inn on Riverside Drive." Mrs. Patterson, bless her paranoid heart, didn't even hesitate. "Something's not right with those kids of yours. I've been thinking it for weeks. Harold said I was being nosy, but a woman knows when something smells fishy. So here I was, 3 days into my fake cruise, sitting in my rented Honda Civic across the street from my own house at 11:45 p.m., wondering if I'd finally lost my mind. The house was dark except for the porch light I'd left on a timer. At exactly 11:58, Mrs. Patterson appeared beside my car like some kind of elderly ninja. I nearly jumped out of my skin. "They're here," she whispered, sliding into my passenger seat without invitation. "Been watching since 10 o'clock. Your boy Jake arrived first, then Emma about an hour later. They're moving around in there with flashlights." My heart started pounding. "Moving around doing what?" Mrs. Patterson checked her watch. 2 more minutes. You'll see." At midnight, every light in my house blazed on simultaneously. Through the windows, I could see Emma in my kitchen, wearing rubber gloves and pulling items out of cabinets. Jake was in the living room, systematically photographing everything with his phone. They moved through my house like they owned it, touching my things, examining my furniture, going through my personal belongings with the efficiency of professional appraisers. "How long have they been doing this?" I whispered. Mrs. Patterson's voice was grim. "Every night since you've been gone. They show up after midnight, stay until about 4 in the morning. Tonight's different, though. Tonight they brought boxes." As if on cue, Jake disappeared into the garage and returned with several large cardboard boxes. He began carefully packing my mother's china, the set I'd inherited when she died 5 years ago, the set worth nearly $10,000. Emma emerged from the kitchen, carrying my jewelry box, the one containing my grandmother's pearl necklace and the diamond earrings Robert gave me for our 20th anniversary. I watched my children systematically loot my home while they thought I was on a cruise ship eating buffet food and playing bingo. Mrs. Patterson patted my hand. "Honey, we need to call the police." But I was already thinking something else entirely, something that would have made Robert laugh if he'd been there to see it. My children thought they were so clever, waiting until dear old Mom was safely out of the way to divide up her assets. What they didn't know was that dear old Mom had learned a few things about being underestimated. I pulled out my phone and started recording. "Not yet," I told Mrs. Patterson. "First, I want to see exactly how deep this rabbit hole goes." The next morning, I called Jake from my hotel room, putting on my best confused elderly mother voice. "Honey, I'm having the strangest problem. I can't seem to find my grandmother's pearl necklace in my jewelry box. I could have sworn I left it right on top before I left for the cruise." There was a pause that lasted about 3 heartbeats too long. "Mom, you're on a cruise. How could you be looking in your jewelry box?" Damn. I'd slipped up. Time for some creative storytelling. "Oh, I meant when I was packing, sweetheart. I wanted to bring it with me for the captain's dinner, but I couldn't find it anywhere. I'm starting to worry I'm losing my memory." "I'm sure it's just misplaced," Jake said quickly. "You know how you get when you're stressed. Remember when you couldn't find your reading glasses last month and they were on your head the whole time?" The condescending little tone in his voice made me want to reach through the phone and slap him. Instead, I played along. "You're probably right. My mind hasn't been the same since your father died. Sometimes I worry I'm developing dementia, like your great-aunt Helen." Another pause. Then Jake's voice got warmer, almost eager. "Mom, have you thought about what you want to do with the house? It's awfully big for one person." There it was, the real agenda. "Well, I suppose I should think about downsizing eventually. But not yet. Too many memories, you know." "Of course. But maybe we should start planning for the future. Emma and I have been talking, and we're concerned about you managing everything alone. The finances, the house maintenance, all of Dad's business affairs." I let him talk for another 10 minutes about their concerns for my well-being, all while taking notes on hotel stationery. Every suggestion they made boiled down to the same thing. Give us control of your assets now before you're too senile to make decisions. After hanging up, I sat on the hotel bed staring at my phone. These were the children I'd raised, loved, sacrificed for. The ones I'd worked 2 jobs to put through college. The ones who'd called me crying when their marriages fell apart, when they lost jobs, when they needed someone to believe in them. And they were planning to rob me blind. My phone rang. "Emma." "Mom, Jake told me you called about your necklace. Are you feeling okay? You sound confused." The fake concern in her voice made my teeth clench. "I'm fine, dear. Just tired from all the activities on the ship. We did glacier viewing today, and I may have overdone it." "About the necklace, Mom, I have an idea. When you get home, why don't Jake and I help you go through your jewelry? Maybe organize it better? Make sure everything valuable is properly secured? That's sweet of you to offer, but I insist. In fact, maybe we should think about getting a safety deposit box for your most valuable pieces. You never know these days with break-ins and such. A safety deposit box that they'd undoubtedly want access to. How thoughtful. We'll see, dear. I should go. The evening show is starting soon." After Emma hung up, I called Mrs. Patterson. "I need you to do something for me. Tonight, I want you to call the police if you see them in my house again. Tell them you're concerned about a break-in." "Are you sure?" "They are your children." "That's exactly why I'm sure." At 12:30 a.m., Mrs. Patterson called. "Police are here. Your kids are trying to explain to the officers that they have permission to be there. And the officers want to speak with you directly. They need confirmation that you gave them permission to be in your house while you're away." This was the moment of truth. I could cover for them, pretend this was all a misunderstanding, let my children continue their midnight treasure hunting expedition. Or I could tell the truth and watch their carefully planned scheme crumble. "Transfer me to the officer." "Mrs. Mitchell? This is Officer Rodriguez. We have 2 individuals in your home who claim to be your children and say they have permission to be here while you're on vacation. Can you confirm this? I took a deep breath. Officer Rodriguez, I never gave my children permission to be in my house while I'm away. In fact, I specifically told them I wanted the house completely secure while I was gone. The silence that followed was beautiful. Ma'am, would you like us to arrest them for breaking and entering? Part of me wanted to say yes immediately, but a bigger part of me wanted to understand the full scope of what they'd been planning. Officer Rodriguez, is it possible to ban them from the property without filing charges tonight? I'd like to speak with them when I return from my trip. We can issue a no trespass order. They won't be allowed on your property until you return and decide how you want to handle this. Perfect. 30 minutes later, Mrs. Patterson called back, cackling like a witch who'd just hexed her worst enemy. You should have seen their faces when the police told them they couldn't come back. Emma started crying and saying it was all a misunderstanding. Jake tried to argue with the officers about family rights and property access. What happened to the boxes? Confiscated as evidence, along with photos of everything they'd already taken. Honey, they had lists. Actual written lists of your belongings, with estimated values next to each item. I hung up and stared at my reflection in the hotel bathroom mirror. The woman looking back at me had the same gray hair, the same wrinkles around her eyes, the same face that Jake and Emma apparently thought belonged to someone too stupid to notice when she was being robbed. But something in her expression had changed. There was a sharpness there that hadn't existed a week ago. A coldness that reminded me of my mother when she'd caught me lying about breaking her favorite vase. My children thought they were dealing with a grieving widow who'd lost her edge. What they were actually dealing with was a woman who'd spent 40 years managing a household budget, organizing charity fundraisers, and keeping track of every detail of a family's complex life. If they wanted to play games with someone's intelligence, they'd picked the wrong opponent. I had 4 more days of fake vacation to plan my next move, and my children had no idea what was coming. I checked out of the hotel early and drove to the city courthouse. If Jake and Emma wanted to play hardball with their mother's assets, they were about to learn I'd been married to a lawyer for 37 years and had picked up a few things along the way. I need to speak with someone about estate planning and asset protection, I told the clerk at the legal aid office. Specifically, protection from family members. The attorney they assigned me was a sharp-eyed woman named Patricia Collins, who reminded me of my daughter if Emma had possessed actual integrity. Patricia listened without interruption as I explained the situation, occasionally taking notes on a yellow legal pad. Mrs. Mitchell, what you're describing is unfortunately common. Adult children who view their aging parents as obstacles to inheritance rather than people deserving of respect and care. The police have evidence of them removing items from my home without permission. What are my options? Patricia set down her pen. Several. You could file criminal charges for theft and breaking and entering. You could pursue civil action for recovery of stolen property. But given what you've told me, I think your best strategy is prevention rather than punishment. She pulled out a thick folder. We're going to make it legally impossible for your children to access your assets, even if something happens to your health or mental capacity. Living trust, durable power of attorney assigned to a neutral party, explicit instructions about your estate that can't be contested. 2 hours later, I walked out of the courthouse with a plan that would have impressed Robert. By the time Patricia finished restructuring my legal affairs, Jake and Emma would have as much access to my money as they did to the crown jewels. Next stop, the bank. Mrs. Mitchell, it's good to see you, said Marcus Webb, my longtime financial advisor. How can I help you today? I want to move all of my assets to accounts that require multiple forms of identification and verification for any access. I also want to establish new beneficiaries for everything. Marcus raised an eyebrow, but didn't question my request. After 30 years of managing my family's finances, he knew better than to argue with me when I'd made up my mind about something. New beneficiaries? I handed him a list I'd written on hotel stationery. My grandchildren's education funds will go directly to them when they turn 18. The house goes to St. Mary's Children's Hospital. The rest gets divided between 3 charities I've chosen. And your children? My children get $1 each, with a note explaining that this represents the exact value of the respect and loyalty they showed their mother. Marcus tried to keep his expression neutral, but I caught the slight twitch at the corner of his mouth. Very well. These changes will take a few days to process, but everything will be ironclad by the end of the week. That evening, I called Jake from the hotel. "Honey, I heard the most disturbing thing from Mrs. Patterson. She said the police were at our house last night." Jake's voice was tight. "Mom, there was a misunderstanding. A neighbor called about suspicious activity, but Emma and I were just checking on the house like you asked us to." "I never asked you to check on the house, Jake. I specifically said I wanted it left alone while I was gone. You must have forgotten. You've been having those memory issues." The gaslighting was beautiful in its audacity. They weren't just stealing from me, they were trying to convince me I was losing my mind. "Memory issues? Mom, you called yesterday asking about your grandmother's necklace, but you were supposedly looking for it while you were on a cruise ship. That doesn't make sense." I let the silence stretch until it became uncomfortable. "Jake, are you suggesting I'm developing dementia?" "I'm suggesting you're under a lot of stress and maybe not thinking clearly. Emma and I are worried about you. We think you should see Dr. Morrison when you get back." Dr. Morrison, who'd known me for 15 years and would never agree that I was incompetent. Unless, of course, my children had been laying groundwork there too. That's a good idea. In fact, I think I should have a complete cognitive evaluation, just to put everyone's minds at ease. Jake's relief was audible. "That's great, Mom. Really great. We just want to make sure you're okay." After hanging up, I called Dr. Morrison's office. "This is Sarah Mitchell. I'd like to schedule a comprehensive cognitive assessment. I'm concerned my children may be questioning my mental capacity." Dr. Morrison's nurse put me through immediately. "Sarah, what's this about cognitive assessment? You were just here 2 months ago, and you were sharp as ever." "Jonathan, I need you to document my mental state thoroughly. I suspect my children are planning to have me declared incompetent." The pause that followed told me Dr. Morrison understood the implications. "Sarah, I've seen this before. Adult children who mistake inheritance anxiety for genuine concern about a parent's well-being. Come in Friday morning. I'll run every test in the book and document everything." Friday couldn't come fast enough. I drove home Thursday night, my fake cruise officially over. The house felt different when I walked in, violated somehow. Knowing that Jake and Emma had been creeping through my rooms, touching my belongings, making lists of what they wanted to steal, made every surface feel contaminated. I found the lists Mrs. Patterson had mentioned, carelessly left on my kitchen counter. Emma's handwriting detailed my jewelry collection with estimated values. Jake's list covered electronics, artwork, and collectibles. At the bottom of his list, in his distinctive scrawl, was a note that made my blood freeze. "Doctor appointment. Ask about memory issues, confusion, possible dementia signs." They hadn't been planning to wait for me to die naturally. They'd been planning to have me declared incompetent and take control of everything while I was still alive to watch them do it. My phone rang at exactly 7 a.m. Friday morning. Emma. "Mom, you're back. How was the cruise?" "Wonderful, dear. Very relaxing, though I did have some strange conversations with you and Jake while I was away." "Strange how?" "Well, you both seemed convinced I was having memory problems. I don't remember telling you I was experiencing any confusion or mental difficulties." Emma's laugh sounded forced. "Oh, you know how we worry. We just want to make sure you're taking care of yourself." Speaking of taking care of myself, I made an appointment with Dr. Morrison today for a complete cognitive evaluation. You know, to put everyone's minds at ease about my mental state. The silence lasted so long, I thought we'd been disconnected. "Emma, are you there?" "Yes, sorry. I was just..." "That's great, Mom. Really great. Jake and I could drive you if you'd like." "No need. I'm perfectly capable of driving myself to a doctor's appointment." After hanging up, I smiled at my reflection in the hallway mirror. The woman looking back at me was about to ace every cognitive test Dr. Morrison threw at her, and then she was going to show her children exactly how sharp her mind really was. They wanted to play games with their mother's mental competency? Game on. Dr. Morrison's cognitive evaluation took 3 hours and covered everything from basic memory tests to complex problem-solving scenarios. When we finished, he leaned back in his chair with the expression of someone who'd just witnessed a master class. "Sarah, your cognitive function is not only normal for your age, it's exceptional. Your memory, reasoning, and processing speed would be impressive for someone 20 years younger. I'd like that documented thoroughly." Already done. I'm also noting in your file that this evaluation was requested due to family concerns that appear to be unfounded. He paused. Sarah, in 30 years of practice, I've learned to recognize the difference between genuine cognitive decline and family members who are eager to assume control of an aging parent's affairs. I drove home with Dr. Morrison's comprehensive report on the passenger seat, feeling like I was carrying ammunition for a war I was finally ready to fight. That evening, Jake and Emma arrived together for what they called a family meeting. They settled into my living room with the air of people who'd rehearsed this conversation. "Mom," Emma began, "we need to talk about your living situation." "What about it?" Jake leaned forward, using what I recognized as his boardroom voice. "This house is too big for you. The maintenance, the expenses, the isolation. It's not healthy for a woman your age. I'm 62, not 92. But you're alone now," Emma added. "And after Dad's death, well, we've noticed some changes." "What kind of changes?" They exchanged one of their looks. Jake cleared his throat. "Memory issues, confusion, difficulty managing basic tasks." I let them build their case, listening as they constructed a narrative about my declining mental state. According to my loving children, I'd forgotten conversations, missed appointments, seemed disoriented during phone calls, and showed signs of general cognitive deterioration. It was a masterful performance, delivered with just the right amount of concerned love and reluctant honesty. If I hadn't known they were lying, I might have been convinced myself. "So what do you suggest?" I asked when they finished. Emma brightened. "We've been looking at some lovely assisted living communities. Nothing too restrictive, just places where you'd have help with daily activities and someone to check on you regularly." "And the house?" "We'd handle selling it for you," Jake said quickly. "Take care of all the paperwork, the real estate details, everything. You wouldn't have to worry about any of it." "How thoughtful. And my other assets?" Another exchange of glances. Emma took this one. "We think it would be easier if Jake and I helped manage your finances, just temporarily, until you're settled in your new place." I nodded thoughtfully. "And you found these assisted living places already?" "We've done some research," Jake admitted. "There's one called Golden Sunset Manor that we think would be perfect. They have immediate availability. Immediate availability. For a woman who, according to you, can barely remember her own name." The temperature in the room dropped about 10 degrees. Emma's smile faltered. "Mom, that's not—" "We never said—" I stood up and walked to my desk, returning with Dr. Morrison's report. "I had that cognitive evaluation you suggested. The results were quite interesting." Jake's face went pale. "What did Dr. Morrison say?" I opened the report and began reading. "Patient demonstrates superior cognitive function across all measured domains. Memory, processing speed, executive function, and reasoning ability all score in the 95th percentile for her age group. No evidence of dementia, mild cognitive impairment, or any other condition affecting mental capacity." The silence that followed was deafening. "Furthermore," I continued, "Dr. Morrison noted that this evaluation was requested due to family concerns that appear to be entirely without medical basis." Emma started to speak, but I held up my hand. "I'm not finished. I also had some interesting conversations with my attorney and financial advisor this week. It seems my estate planning needed some updating." Jake found his voice. "Mom, we can explain—" "Explain what?" "How you've been breaking into my house every night for a week. How you made lists of my possessions with their estimated values. How you planned to have me declared incompetent so you could steal everything I own." Emma's eyes filled with tears. "We weren't stealing. We were trying to protect you." "From what?" "From making bad decisions with Dad's money. From being taken advantage of by strangers when you're vulnerable." The audacity was breathtaking. "So you decided to take advantage of me instead?" Jake stood up abruptly. "Mom, you're being unfair." "We're your children. We love you." "No," I said quietly. "You love what you think you're entitled to inherit, but you don't love me enough to wait for me to die naturally before you start dividing up my assets." I walked to the front door and opened it. "I want both of you to leave. Don't come back unless you're invited." Emma was crying openly now. "Mom, please. We can work this out. We made mistakes, but we're still family. Family doesn't rob family, Emma. Family doesn't try to convince their mother she's losing her mind so they can steal her inheritance." Jake tried one last approach. You can't just cut us out of your life. We're your children. I looked at this man I'd raised. This person I'd loved unconditionally for 35 years and felt nothing but disappointment. You stopped being my children the moment you started seeing me as an obstacle to your financial plans. They left, but not before Jake turned back with an expression I'd never seen before. Cold. Calculating. Dangerous. This isn't over, Mom. You need us more than you think. After they drove away, I sat in my empty living room and thought about the conversation. They'd shown me exactly who they really were when they thought I was powerless to stop them. The question was, what were they going to do now that their original plan had failed? My phone rang at midnight. Unknown number. Mrs. Mitchell, this is Officer Rodriguez. We've had a report of suspicious activity at your address. Someone called in saying they were concerned about an elderly woman living alone who might be in distress. I looked out my bedroom window and saw Jake's car parked 3 houses down. Officer Rodriguez, I'm fine, but I think my son is calling in false welfare checks to harass me. We'll need to do a wellness check since the call was made, but if this becomes a pattern, we can discuss harassment charges. 15 minutes later, 2 police officers confirmed I was alive and well. After they left, I watched Jake's car drive away and realized something important. The gloves were officially off. If my children wanted to escalate this conflict, I was ready to show them exactly what a sharp, 62-year-old woman could do when she stopped playing by the rules of parental love and started playing by the rules of war. The harassment campaign began in earnest Monday morning. First, it was Adult Protective Services calling about concerns raised by family members regarding my ability to live independently. Then the gas company, saying someone had reported a possible gas leak at my address that needed immediate inspection. By noon, I'd received visits from paramedics responding to a medical emergency, a social worker investigating reports of self-neglect, and a fire inspector checking on safety violations in my home. Each caller mentioned that the report had come from concerned family members. Jake and Emma were trying to overwhelm me with bureaucracy, hoping I'd crack under the pressure and agree to their assisted living plan just to make the harassment stop. What they didn't realize was that they were creating a paper trail that would destroy them in court. I documented every false report, every unnecessary visit, every agency that showed up at my door. By Thursday, I had enough evidence to file harassment charges that would keep them busy with lawyers for months. But I wanted more than legal victory. I wanted them to understand exactly how it felt to be betrayed by family. Friday evening, Emma called with her voice thick with fake tears. Mom, I've been thinking about what happened last week. I realize we handled everything wrong. Could we try again? Maybe dinner tomorrow night? Just the 3 of us, like old times? What makes you think I want to have dinner with people who tried to steal my house? Please, one conversation. If you still want us out of your life after that, we'll respect your wishes. The desperation in her voice told me they were running out of options. Whatever they'd planned next required getting me face to face. Fine. Saturday at 6. But this is your only chance to explain yourselves. Saturday afternoon, I called Mrs. Patterson. I need you to do something for me tonight. Record everything that happens at my house from about 5:30 until whenever they leave. You think they're planning something? I think they're planning something stupid. At exactly 6 p.m., Jake and Emma arrived together, both dressed formally, like they were attending a business meeting rather than a family dinner. Emma carried a bottle of wine, an expensive vintage I recognized from Robert's collection. This is lovely, Emma said, setting the wine on my dining room table. Remember this? It's the bottle Dad was saving for your 40th wedding anniversary. The emotional manipulation was beautifully orchestrated. Remind Mom of her dead husband, create a sentimental atmosphere, soften her up for whatever came next. I remember. Robert would have opened it next year. Jake uncorked the wine with practiced efficiency. Maybe we should have a toast. To Dad's memory and to family. I watched him pour 3 glasses, noticing how he made sure mine came from a specific part of the bottle, how he positioned my glass carefully in front of my place setting, how he and Emma exchanged a meaningful look when he finished pouring. To family, I said, raising my glass, but not drinking. They both drank immediately. I pretended to sip mine while keeping it at my lips without swallowing. Mom, Emma began, we owe you an apology. What we did was wrong. Very wrong, Jake added. We let our concern for your welfare cloud our judgment. For the next hour, they delivered the most convincing apology I'd heard since Emma was 8 years old and had broken my mother's antique vase. They admitted their mistakes, expressed genuine remorse, and promised to respect my independence going forward. It was complete bullshit, but it was expertly delivered bullshit. Halfway through their performance, I began to feel dizzy. The room started spinning slightly, and my thoughts became foggy around the edges. Whatever they'd put in the wine was working. I excused myself to use the bathroom, secretly dumping the rest of my wine down the sink and splashing cold water on my face. When I returned, both of them were watching me carefully. "Are you feeling all right, Mom?" Emma asked, with perfect concern. "You look a little pale." "Just tired. It's been a stressful week." "Maybe you should sit down," Jake suggested. "You seem unsteady." I played along, allowing myself to appear more affected than I actually was. Within minutes, they were both expressing concern about my sudden health episode. "I think we should call Dr. Morrison," Emma said. "This isn't normal." "No need," I mumbled, letting my words slur slightly. "Just need to rest." Jake was already on his phone. "I'm calling 911. Mom, you might be having a stroke." And there it was. The end game. Drug their mother with something that would mimic a medical emergency, get her hospitalized, then claim she was too mentally impaired to make decisions about her own care. While she was sedated and vulnerable, they'd swoop in with legal documents giving them control of her assets. It was actually brilliant in a sociopathic way. The ambulance arrived within 10 minutes. As the paramedics checked my vital signs and asked questions, Jake and Emma played the roles of concerned children perfectly. They provided detailed accounts of my symptoms and mentioned their ongoing concerns about my mental state. "She's been having memory problems," Emma explained to the lead paramedic. "We've been trying to get her to see specialists, but she's been resistant." "Has she seemed confused or disoriented lately?" the paramedic asked. "Very confused," Jake confirmed. "She's been forgetting conversations, missing appointments. Sometimes she doesn't recognize familiar places." I lay on the stretcher, listening to my children systematically destroy my reputation with a pack of lies, and felt something inside me turn to ice. This wasn't just theft. This was elaborate, premeditated abuse designed to strip me of my dignity, my autonomy, and my identity. At the hospital, I was admitted for observation while they ran tests to determine what had caused my episode. Jake and Emma maintained their vigil by my bedside, playing the devoted children for every nurse and doctor who entered the room. Around midnight, when they thought I was sleeping, I heard them talking quietly in the hallway. "The blood tests will show the sedative," Emma whispered. "How do we explain that?" "We don't," Jake replied. "We stick to the story that she's been having episodes like this for weeks. Memory problems, confusion, disorientation. By the time the doctors finish evaluating her mental state, we'll have enough evidence for a competency hearing. And if she tries to fight it? Who's going to believe a confused old woman over her 2 loving children who've been trying to get her help for months?" I closed my eyes and smiled in the darkness. They thought they'd won. What they didn't know was that every word of their hallway conversation was being recorded by the phone hidden in my hospital gown pocket. And tomorrow they were going to discover that underestimating their mother had been the biggest mistake of their lives. I was discharged from the hospital Sunday morning with a clean bill of health and a toxicology report showing trace amounts of zolpidem in my system, a sleeping medication I'd never been prescribed. When Dr. Morrison reviewed the results, his face went dark. "Sarah, someone drugged you. This level of zolpidem would cause exactly the symptoms the paramedics documented: dizziness, confusion, slurred speech. I know who did it. We need to call the police immediately." "Not yet. I want to see how far they're willing to go." "Doctor." Morrison stared at me like I'd lost my mind. "Sarah, they poisoned you. They could have killed you. But they didn't kill me. They underestimated me. And now I'm going to show them what happens when you underestimate someone who has nothing left to lose." "Monday morning," Emma called with her voice full of concern. "Mom, how are you feeling? You gave us such a scare Saturday night." "Better, thank you, though I'm still confused about what happened. The doctor said it could be related to the stress and memory issues you've been experiencing. Jake and I think it's time to seriously consider that assisted living community we discussed. Maybe you're right. Could you set up a tour? The relief in Emma's voice was audible. Of course. I'll call Golden Sunset Manor today and arrange something for this week. That would be wonderful, dear. I'm starting to realize I might need more help than I've been willing to admit. After hanging up, I called Patricia Collins at Legal Aid. I need you to do something for me. I want you to contact Golden Sunset Manor and inquire about their procedures for admitting new residents. Specifically, I want to know what documents they require for someone whose adult children are claiming she's mentally incompetent. Sarah, what are you planning? I'm planning to let my children dig their hole a little deeper before I bury them in it. Tuesday afternoon. Jake and Emma arrived to drive me to the assisted living facility. As we pulled into the parking lot, I noticed how they both relaxed, like they were finally reaching the finish line of a difficult race. Golden Sunset Manor was exactly what you'd expect from a place designed to warehouse inconvenient elderly people. Beige walls, fluorescent lighting, and the smell of industrial disinfectant masquerading as cleanliness. The staff spoke to residents in the sing-song voice usually reserved for toddlers. Our tour guide was a perky woman named Brenda, who treated me like I was already incapable of making my own decisions. Now, Mrs. Mitchell, the wonderful thing about our community is that you won't have to worry about any of those complicated daily tasks anymore. We'll handle your medications, your finances, your meal planning, everything. What about visitors? I asked. Family members are welcome anytime, of course. In fact, we encourage children to be very involved in their parents' care decisions. Jake stepped forward. Actually, we have some concerns about Mom's ability to make sound decisions lately. What's your procedure for situations where family members need to take a more active role? Brenda's smile became more professional. We work closely with families to ensure the best outcomes for our residents. When cognitive issues arise, we can facilitate the legal processes necessary to protect everyone involved. Legal processes? Guardianship procedures, competency evaluations, asset management transitions. We have partnerships with attorneys who specialize in elder law. I felt like I was touring a sophisticated scam operation designed to strip elderly people of their rights and money with a veneer of medical legitimacy. How soon could someone move in? Emma asked. For someone in Mrs. Mitchell's situation, we could expedite the process, perhaps as early as next week, if the paperwork is handled quickly. As we drove home, Jake and Emma were practically giddy with excitement. They thought they'd found the perfect solution, a place that would collaborate in their efforts to control my life while providing legal cover for their actions. What did you think, Mom? Emma asked. It seemed very thorough, I said carefully, though I'm still not sure I'm ready to give up my independence. Sometimes what we want and what we need are different things, Jake replied. Emma and I just want what's best for you. That evening, I called my granddaughter Sophie. At 8 years old, she was too young to understand the adult drama surrounding her, but old enough to repeat conversations she'd overheard. Hi, Grandma. Mommy said you might be moving to a new house. Did she? What else did Mommy say? She told Daddy that you're sick and don't remember things anymore, and that she and Uncle Jake are going to take care of your money so bad people don't steal it. Out of the mouths of babes. Sophie, have you noticed Mommy and Uncle Jake acting differently lately? They have lots of meetings now. Important grown-up meetings where they whisper and look at papers. Mommy says they're planning something special for you. After hanging up with Sophie, I sat in my kitchen looking at the wine glass Jake had poured for me Saturday night. I'd saved it as evidence, but now I realized it represented something more important than proof of their crime. It represented the moment my children stopped seeing me as their mother and started seeing me as their victim. Wednesday morning, I called Golden Sunset Manor and asked to speak with the administrator. This is Sarah Mitchell. My children brought me for a tour yesterday, and I have some questions about your admission procedures. Of course, Mrs. Mitchell. How can I help you? I want to understand exactly what documents would be required if my family tried to admit me against my will. There was a pause. Mrs. Mitchell, are you concerned about being forced into admission? I'm concerned about my children's motivations, and I want to know what legal protections I have. The administrator's tone became more serious. Mrs. Mitchell, no one can be admitted to our facility against their will unless there's been a legal determination of incompetency. If you have concerns about your family's intentions, you should consult with an attorney. I already have, but I wanted to understand your role in this process. Ma'am, if you're calling to warn us about a potential fraudulent admission attempt, We take those concerns very seriously. I smiled. That's exactly what I'm doing. Thursday morning, Jake called with barely contained excitement. Mom, we've been thinking. Maybe you should move to Golden Sunset sooner rather than later. The stress of managing everything alone doesn't seem healthy for you. How soon were you thinking? This weekend. I know it seems fast, but they have availability, and after what happened Saturday night, Emma and I are really worried about you living alone. This weekend? I let my voice sound uncertain and frightened. That's very sudden. Sometimes sudden changes are exactly what we need. Fresh start, new environment, people to take care of you properly. I suppose, if you think it's best. We do, Mom. We really do. In fact, we've already started working on the paperwork. Of course they had. I hung up and immediately called Patricia Collins. They're making their move this weekend. Are you ready? Sarah, are you absolutely certain you want to go through with this? What you're planning is risky. Not as risky as letting them succeed. Friday afternoon, I received a call from Brenda at Golden Sunset Manor. Mrs. Mitchell, your son contacted us about an emergency admission for this weekend. However, we wanted to speak with you directly before proceeding. An emergency admission? He indicated you'd had another medical episode and that your family was concerned about your safety living alone. Jake was moving fast, trying to get me committed before I could change my mind or seek legal help. Brenda, I need to tell you something important. My children are attempting to have me falsely admitted so they can gain control of my assets. I am not experiencing any medical or cognitive issues, and I do not consent to admission to your facility. Mrs. Mitchell, these are serious allegations. Yes, they are, and I have evidence to support them. That evening, Jake and Emma arrived at my house with suitcases and moving boxes. They'd brought a moving truck and several men to pack my belongings. Surprise, Emma said with forced cheer. We decided to help you pack so the transition would be easier. I watched them direct strangers through my home, boxing up my life with the efficiency of professional movers. They'd planned every detail, anticipated every obstacle, prepared for every contingency. Everything except the possibility that their mother was smarter than they were. As the movers loaded my furniture into their truck, I smiled and played the role of grateful, confused elderly woman one last time. Tomorrow, my children were going to learn that some games have consequences they never saw coming. Saturday morning arrived with the kind of crisp clarity that makes everything seem possible. I woke up at 5 a.m., made coffee in my empty kitchen, and reviewed my battle plan one final time. At 8 a.m., Jake and Emma arrived with a van and 2 orderlies from Golden Sunset Manor. They'd brought official-looking paperwork and medical transport equipment, clearly intending to make this look like a legitimate medical necessity rather than kidnapping. Good morning, Mom, Emma said with that bright, fake cheerfulness she'd perfected over the past few weeks. Ready for your big moving day? I suppose so, though I'm still nervous about all this. Jake hugged me with what felt like genuine affection. For a moment, I almost remembered the little boy who used to climb into my lap when he had nightmares. Then I remembered the drugged wine and the stolen jewelry, and my heart hardened again. Everything's going to be perfect, Mom. You'll see. The orderlies introduced themselves politely and began checking their equipment. These weren't criminals. They were healthcare workers who'd been told they were helping an elderly woman transition to appropriate care. Mrs. Mitchell, one of them said kindly, we're here to make sure you get to your new home safely and comfortably. I nodded and played my part. Thank you. I appreciate your help. What happened next would have been funny if it weren't so horrifying. Jake presented the orderlies with paperwork that allegedly gave him medical power of attorney and authorization to make care decisions for his cognitively impaired mother. Emma showed them a letter, supposedly from Dr. Morrison, recommending immediate placement in supervised care. Both documents were expertly forged. The orderlies, following protocol for what they believed was a legitimate medical transport, began preparing to escort me to their van. That's when Patricia Collins arrived, with 2 police officers and a court clerk. Excuse me, Patricia announced in her lawyer voice. I represent Mrs. Mitchell, and I have a court order suspending any attempt to remove her from her home. The orderlies stopped immediately. Jake's face went pale. Emma started talking rapidly, trying to explain that this was all a misunderstanding. Officers, Patricia continued, I believe you'll find that Mr. and Mrs. Henderson here are attempting to commit fraud by using forged medical documents to forcibly remove a competent adult from her home. One of the police officers stepped forward. Ma'am, we'll need to see those documents. Jake handed over the forged power of attorney with hands that were visibly shaking. Emma tried to run, before the second officer gently but firmly asked her to stay put. The court clerk examined the documents with the eye of someone who'd seen every type of fraud imaginable. These are forgeries, she announced. The signatures don't match the ones on file, and Dr. Morrison's office confirmed this morning that he never wrote any such letter. I watched my children's carefully constructed plan crumble in real time. The orderlies, realizing they'd been duped, immediately distanced themselves from the situation. The paperwork was confiscated as evidence, and Jake and Emma found themselves under arrest for fraud, forgery, and attempted kidnapping. But I wasn't finished yet. Officers, I said calmly, there's something else you should know. I have recordings of my children discussing their plan to drug me and steal my assets. I pulled out my phone and played the hospital hallway conversation I'd recorded. Jake and Emma's voices filled my living room, discussing how they'd planned to destroy my reputation and take control of my finances. The second arrest was for elder abuse and conspiracy. As they loaded my children into police cars, Emma turned to me with tears streaming down her face. Mom, please. We're your family. You can't do this to us. I looked at this woman I'd raised, this person I'd loved unconditionally for 32 years, and felt nothing but disappointment. You stopped being my family the moment you decided I was worth more to you dead than alive. Jake said nothing. He just stared at me with an expression I couldn't read. Part shock, part hatred, part something that might have been respect. After they drove away, I stood in my empty house surrounded by evidence of my children's betrayal and felt something I hadn't expected. Relief. The orderlies apologized profusely before leaving. The court clerk assured me that charges would be filed within the week. Patricia Collins packed up her legal documents with the satisfaction of someone who just won a difficult case. But I wasn't done yet. That afternoon, I called my granddaughter Sophie. Hi, sweetheart. I wanted to let you know that Mommy and Daddy might be away for a while. They had to go handle some important grown-up business. Are you still sick? Grandma? No, baby. I was never sick. Some people made a mistake about that. But everything's okay now. Can I still come visit you? Of course. In fact, I was thinking we could have a sleepover next weekend. Just you and me. After hanging up with Sophie, I walked through my house, my empty, quiet, peaceful house, and started making plans. My children had tried to steal my life. Instead, they'd given me something more valuable, the absolute certainty that I was stronger than I'd ever imagined. The old Sarah Mitchell would have forgiven them, would have made excuses for their behavior, would have prioritized family harmony over justice. But the old Sarah Mitchell was gone, replaced by someone who understood that sometimes the people you love most are the ones most capable of destroying you. And sometimes the only way to save yourself is to fight back with everything you have. Monday morning brought phone calls that made me smile over my coffee. The first was from Golden Sunset Manor's administrator, calling to apologize for their facility's involvement in what they now understood was an attempted fraud. The second was from Dr. Morrison, furious that someone had forged his signature and letterhead. The third was from Marcus Webb at the bank, confirming that all my assets were secure and that the new legal protections were in place. The fourth call was from Jake and Emma's attorney. Mrs. Mitchell, this is David Harrison. I represent your son and daughter regarding the charges filed this weekend. How can I help you? Mr. Harrison? My clients would like to meet with you to discuss a resolution to this situation. I almost laughed. Even now, facing fraud and elder abuse charges, they thought they could negotiate their way out of the consequences. What kind of resolution? They're prepared to make restitution for any property that was removed from your home without permission. They're also willing to seek counseling for family communication issues. As if trying to drug their mother and steal her house was a simple misunderstanding. Mr. Harrison, your clients attempted to have me forcibly committed to steal my assets. They drugged me with prescription medication. They forged legal documents. These aren't communication issues. These are felonies. Mrs. Mitchell, I understand you're upset, but destroying your children's lives won't help anyone. They're both facing serious jail time. Emma could lose her teaching license. Jake could lose his business. They should have considered those consequences before they decided to commit crimes against their mother. Is there anything that might convince you to consider a plea agreement? I thought about it for exactly 2 seconds. Mr. Harrison, the only thing that would convince me to show my children mercy is if they could explain why they thought I deserved what they did to me. I don't understand. Neither do I. And until I do, I have no interest in plea agreements. Tuesday afternoon, Patricia Collins called with news I'd been expecting. Sarah, Jake, and Emma want to see you. They're asking for a meeting at the county jail. Both of them? Together. Their attorney says they want to apologize and explain their actions. I considered this. Part of me wanted to refuse, to let them sit in jail wondering if their mother would ever speak to them again. But a bigger part of me needed to understand how the children I'd raised had become people capable of such elaborate cruelty. Set it up. Wednesday morning, I walked into the county jail's visiting room wearing the navy blue dress I'd worn to Robert's funeral. I wanted Jake and Emma to see exactly who they'd been dealing with, not a confused elderly woman, but a person who deserved their respect. They looked terrible. Emma's eyes were red from crying, her hair unwashed, her usual perfect appearance completely shattered. Jake looked like he hadn't slept in days, his expensive suit replaced by an orange jumpsuit that made him look smaller and younger than his 35 years. "Mom," Emma started, her voice breaking. "Thank you for coming." I sat down across from them and waited. If they wanted to explain themselves, they could do it without my help. Jake cleared his throat. "We know what we did was wrong." "Do you?" "Because your lawyer seems to think this was a communication problem." "It wasn't a communication problem," Emma said quickly. We were scared." "Scared of what?" They exchanged one of their looks, but this time it was full of shame rather than conspiracy. "After Dad died," Jake began, "we started thinking about what would happen to you, the house, the money, everything he'd worked for." "And?" Emma leaned forward. "We were scared you'd get remarried, or that some con artist would convince you to change your will. We've seen it happen to other families." I stared at them. "So you decided to con me yourselves?" "We decided to protect the family assets," Jake said, then winced at how that sounded. We thought if we could just manage things for you, make sure everything stayed in the family. You thought you could steal from me for my own good." "It wasn't supposed to be stealing," Emma insisted. "We were going to take care of you. You would have had everything you needed, everything except my freedom, my dignity, and my right to make my own decisions." The silence stretched until it became unbearable. Finally, Jake spoke. "Mom, we know we fucked up. We know we hurt you, but we never wanted to hurt you." "Then explain the drugged wine. Explain the forged documents. Explain how you plan to have me declared incompetent." Emma started crying again. "We got in too deep. It started with just wanting to protect you, but then we realized you were smarter than we'd given you credit for, and we panicked. So you decided to eliminate my intelligence as a factor? We thought if you seemed confused, if there was medical documentation of cognitive decline, it would be easier to convince you to let us help." "Help," I repeated. "Is that what you call it?" Jake looked me directly in the eyes for the first time since I'd arrived. "Mom, we're sorry. We're genuinely, completely sorry. What we did was unforgivable." "Yes, it was. But we're still your children, and you're still our mother. There has to be some way to fix this." I looked at these 2 people I'd raised, these adults who'd somehow convinced themselves that betraying their mother was an act of love, and felt a sadness so deep it made my chest hurt. "Jake, Emma, I need you to understand something. The mother you're talking to right now, the one who raised you and loved you and sacrificed for you, she died the night you drugged her wine. The woman sitting across from you now is someone different, someone harder, someone who's learned that sometimes the people you trust most are the ones most willing to destroy you." Emma reached across the table like she wanted to touch my hand, then pulled back. "We can rebuild. We can earn your trust back." "No," I said gently. "You can't, because I will never again be vulnerable enough to trust you. And a relationship without trust isn't a relationship at all." I stood up to leave, then turned back. "I want you to know that I don't hate you. I'm disappointed in you. I'm heartbroken by what you chose to become, but I don't hate you. Then why won't you help us? Jake asked desperately. Because helping you now would mean teaching you that there are no real consequences for betraying the people who love you. And you're too old for me to still be responsible for teaching you right from wrong. I walked out of the jail and didn't look back. That evening, I called Sophie and arranged for her to spend the weekend with me. 8 years old, bright and curious and completely innocent of her parents' crimes. Grandma, when are Mommy and Daddy coming home? I don't know, sweetheart. But I want you to know that whatever happens, you'll always have me. Are you going to take care of me now? I looked at this little girl who carried my genes and my hopes for the future, and realized that maybe my children's betrayal had given me something valuable after all. A chance to raise someone the right way, someone who would understand that love doesn't justify betrayal, that family means protection rather than exploitation, and that sometimes the strongest thing you can do is walk away from people who refuse to treat you with respect. Yes, baby, I'm going to take care of you. For the first time in weeks, I felt genuinely hopeful about the future. 3 months later, I was sitting in my lawyer's office reviewing the final settlement when Patricia Collins handed me a document that made me smile. Sarah, this is the restitution agreement. Jake and Emma have agreed to pay back every penny they took or attempted to take, plus damages for emotional distress and legal fees. The amount was substantial, enough to ensure my grandchildren's college educations and leave a meaningful inheritance to the charities I'd chosen. Money that Jake and Emma would now have to earn rather than inherit. They're also both pleading guilty to the fraud charges, Patricia continued. Jake will serve 18 months. Emma will serve 12 months and lose her teaching license for 5 years. I felt no satisfaction in their punishment, only a deep sadness that it had come to this. There's something else, Patricia said, pulling out another folder. Emma's ex-husband Tom has filed for full custody of the children. With Emma's criminal conviction and Jake's involvement, he's likely to get it. This was the part that kept me awake at night. Sophie and Ben, innocent victims of their parents' greed, caught in the middle of a situation they couldn't understand. Tom has asked if you'd be willing to serve as a character witness. He also wanted to know if you'd consider being part of the children's lives going forward. I thought about this carefully. Tom had always been a good father, and his divorce from Emma had been more about her controlling behavior than any major character flaws on his part. Set up a meeting. I want to talk to him about what's best for Sophie and Ben. That afternoon, I met Tom at a coffee shop near his office. He looked exhausted, like someone who'd been fighting battles on multiple fronts. Sarah, thank you for meeting with me. I know this whole situation has been hell for you. How are the children handling it? As well as can be expected. They know their mom and Uncle Jake are in trouble, but I've tried to keep the details age-appropriate. What do you need from me? Tom pulled out a folder with custody documents. Emma's trying to fight the custody change. She's claiming that removing the children from their grandmother's influence would be harmful to their well-being. The irony was breathtaking. Emma wanted to use her relationship with me to keep her children, even after she'd tried to destroy my life. What's your position on my relationship with Sophie and Ben? I want them to know their grandmother. You've always been good to them, and they adore you. But I also want them to understand that actions have consequences, even when family members make bad choices. I studied Tom's face, looking for hidden agendas or manipulation. I found none, just a father trying to protect his children from the chaos their mother had created. Tom, I'll testify that you're a good father, and that the children would be better off in your custody. But I want to be clear about something. If you try to use me as a weapon against Emma or restrict my access to my grandchildren for any reason other than their well-being, this support stops immediately. Understood. And Sarah, I'm sorry about what Jake and Emma did to you. It was wrong and it was stupid, and they're going to regret it for the rest of their lives. They already do. The custody hearing was scheduled for the following month. In the meantime, I spent time with Sophie and Ben, taking them to parks and museums and trying to give them some stability in the chaos their world had become. Grandma, Sophie asked one afternoon while we were feeding ducks at the park, why can't I see Mommy anymore? I'd been dreading this question, but I'd prepared an answer that was honest without being cruel. Mommy made some very bad choices that hurt people. Now she has to face the consequences of those choices. But that doesn't change how much she loves you. Did she hurt you? Yes, sweetheart. She did. Are you mad at her? I thought about this carefully. I'm disappointed in her, and I'm sad that she chose to do things that hurt our family. But mad? Not anymore. Being mad takes too much energy, and I'd rather use my energy taking care of you and your brother. Sophie considered this with the seriousness of an 8-year-old processing adult concepts. Will she get better? I hope so, but that's up to her. The custody hearing went exactly as Tom and I had predicted. Emma's attorney tried to argue that separating the children from their extended family would cause additional trauma, but the judge wasn't impressed by the woman who'd tried to defraud her own mother, claiming to prioritize family relationships. Tom was awarded full custody. I was granted generous visitation rights, and Emma lost yet another piece of the life she'd tried to steal from me. 2 weeks after the hearing, I received a letter from Emma in prison. The handwriting was shakier than usual, and there were water stains that suggested tears. Mom, I know you probably won't read this, but I had to try. Every day in here, I think about what we did to you. Not just the legal stuff, but the betrayal. The way we made you feel like you were losing your mind. The way we treated you like an obstacle instead of our mother. I understand now why you can't forgive us. I understand that trust, once broken, the way we broke it, can never be repaired. But I want you to know that I see my children every day in here. Not literally, but in my mind. I see Sophie's face and Ben's laugh. And I know that I've lost them because of my own choices. I've lost them, and I've lost you. And I've lost any chance of being the daughter you deserved. I'm not asking for forgiveness. I'm not asking for another chance. I'm just asking you to please don't let my mistakes poison your relationship with my children. They need you. And maybe, in some small way, taking care of them might help heal some of the damage I've done. I love you, Mom. I know I have no right to say that anymore. But it's true. Emma. I read the letter 3 times, then put it in a box with all the other documents from this nightmare. Emma was right about one thing. Her mistakes wouldn't poison my relationship with her children. Sophie and Ben would grow up knowing they were loved, knowing they were safe, and knowing that family meant protection and support, not exploitation and betrayal. They would grow up to be better people than their mother had become. And maybe that would be justice enough. 6 months after the trials ended, I was sitting in my garden watching Sophie and Ben play on the swing set Tom had installed when my phone rang. Unknown number. Mrs. Mitchell, this is Jennifer Walsh from Channel 7 News. I'm working on a story about elder abuse and financial crimes against seniors. Would you be willing to share your experience? I'd been expecting this call. In a city this size, the story of a mother who'd outsmarted her children's elaborate fraud scheme had been circulating through various networks for months. Ms. Walsh, what kind of story are you planning? A segment on how seniors can protect themselves from financial abuse, especially abuse by family members. Your case is particularly interesting because you not only recognized what was happening, but you actively fought back. I thought about this. How many other elderly people were being manipulated by adult children who saw them as obstacles to inheritance rather than human beings deserving of respect? I'll consider it. But I want editorial control over how my story is presented. Of course. Would you be free to meet this week? 3 days later, I sat in my living room across from Jennifer Walsh and her camera crew, wearing the same navy dress I'd worn to the jail meeting with Jake and Emma. I wanted to look like exactly what I was, a competent, intelligent woman who refused to be anyone's victim. Mrs. Mitchell, can you tell us what first made you suspicious of your children's behavior? The attention, I said simply. Adult children who suddenly become very interested in their elderly parents' daily activities, finances, and living situation should be a red flag, especially when that attention comes with suggestions that the parent can no longer manage their own affairs. What would you tell other seniors who might be experiencing something similar? I looked directly into the camera. Trust your instincts. If something feels wrong, it probably is wrong. Don't let anyone convince you that your concerns are symptoms of aging or confusion. And most importantly, don't assume that family members are acting in your best interests just because they're family. Your children claimed they were trying to protect you. How do you respond to that? Protection doesn't require deception. Protection doesn't require drugging someone's wine or forging legal documents. Protection certainly doesn't require attempting to have someone declared mentally incompetent against their will. What advice would you give to adult children who are genuinely concerned about an aging parent's well-being? Have honest conversations. Respect your parents' autonomy, offer help without demanding control, and remember that your parent's money belongs to your parent, not to you. When the interview aired 2 weeks later, I received dozens of phone calls from other seniors who recognized elements of their own situations in my story. Isolation tactics, gaslighting about memory issues, sudden interest in financial affairs, pressure to sign legal documents or make major life changes. I started volunteering with a local organization that provided support to elderly abuse victims. It felt good to use my experience to help others recognize and resist manipulation. One Thursday afternoon, while I was reviewing case files at the community center, Patricia Collins called with news I'd been half expecting. "Sarah, Jake was released on parole yesterday. Emma still has 4 months left on her sentence. Has he tried to contact me? Not directly, but his parole officer says he's asking about the possibility of supervised visits with his children." I thought about this carefully. Sophie and Ben occasionally asked about their uncle, and I'd tried to answer their questions honestly without poisoning their relationship with him. What's Tom's position? Tom's willing to consider supervised visits if Jake completes a court-mandated counseling program and demonstrates genuine remorse for his actions. And Jake's position? He's enrolled in the program. He's also asked his parole officer to convey a message to you. What message? He said to tell you that he understands why you can't forgive him, but he wants you to know that prison taught him the difference between remorse and regret. He's remorseful. I was quiet for a long moment. Patricia, what's the difference between remorse and regret? Regret is wishing you hadn't gotten caught. Remorse is understanding the full impact of your actions on other people and being genuinely sorry for the harm you caused. That evening, I was reading to Sophie before bedtime when she asked a question that caught me off guard. "Grandma, do you miss Mommy and Uncle Jake?" I set down the book and looked at this beautiful little girl who had her mother's eyes but hopefully not her mother's capacity for betrayal. "I miss the people I thought they were," I said carefully. "But I don't miss the people they actually turned out to be. Will they ever get better? I hope so. Sweetheart, people can change if they really want to, but they have to do the work themselves." 6 months later, I received another letter from Emma. This one was different, shorter, more honest, less focused on her own pain and more focused on acknowledging mine. "Mom, I've been in therapy for months, trying to understand how I became someone capable of doing what I did to you. I know now that I was never protecting you or the family assets. I was protecting my own sense of entitlement. I felt like I deserved your money because I was your daughter, and I was angry that you might live long enough to spend it on yourself instead of leaving it to me. I can't undo what I did. I can't give you back the trust I destroyed or the peace of mind I stole, but I can promise you that I'm working every day to become someone who would never hurt the people she's supposed to love. I don't expect forgiveness. I don't expect a relationship. I just want you to know that I finally understand what I took from you, and I'm sorry. Emma." I read the letter once, then put it in the box with all the others. That afternoon, I sat in my garden watching my grandchildren play and thought about the conversation I'd had with Mrs. Patterson the night this all began. She told me to trust my instincts, to pay attention when something felt wrong. The best advice I'd ever received. At 63, I'd learned that sometimes the people you love most are the ones most capable of destroying you. But I'd also learned that being vulnerable doesn't mean being powerless, and that sometimes the strongest thing you can do is refuse to accept unacceptable behavior, even from family. My children had tried to steal my life, my dignity, and my autonomy. Instead, they'd given me something more valuable: absolute certainty about my own strength and the knowledge that I would never again allow anyone to treat me as less than I was worth. Sophie ran over and climbed into my lap, her face flushed from playing. "Grandma, will you tell me a story?" I hugged her close and smiled. Once upon a time, there was a woman who learned that sometimes the most important battles are the ones you fight against people who claim they love you. Is it a happy story? I looked around my peaceful garden, at my secure home, at this precious child who would grow up understanding her own worth because I was here to teach her. It has a happy ending, and it did. Thanks for listening. Don't forget to subscribe and feel free to share your story in the comments. Your voice matters.